Alright, I'm not gonna lie to you. This story actually got to me. It freaked me out in a way I didn't expect. The things that happen in it, they're creepy, they're strange, and they don't make sense. So stick around until the end, because you're not gonna believe what happens. This story is about a man from Iraq named Firas. He worked in a place most of us can't even imagine setting foot in, a morgue for washing the dead. And after doing it for so long, something changed inside of him. It was like death had taken root in his heart. He became completely numb, like he didn't have feelings anymore. And honestly, it wasn't hard to understand why. The number of bodies he had to wash, especially during some of Iraq's darkest years, and the disturbing things he witnessed while doing it. It was just too much. Now, Firas was from Baghdad, and the last time he ever worked in that morgue was back in 2007. After what happened that day, he walked away from that job for good. He said the years he spent working there were some of the most intense of his life. The volume of deaths, the terrifying moments. He'd never experienced anything like it. At first, it wasn't even his job. It was his father's. His dad had worked there for years. But near the end of his life, when he became ill, he gave Firas one final request: to carry on his work once he passed. And so, when his father died, Firas stepped in. He kept doing the job, not because he wanted to, but because it was their only way to make a living. One of the strangest nights he ever had started off like any other. It was late. He had just finished washing a body and was cleaning up, putting the cedar and camphor back in place. Cedar is a cleanser used during the washing, and camphor helps preserve the body and slow decay. He was organizing everything when he suddenly heard voices from outside, softly chanting. A group entered the room carrying a coffin. They brought it to the washing table, opened it, and laid the body down. Then all of them left, except for one man who stayed behind, standing near the deceased. Firas looked at the man. He had thick black eyebrows, cold black eyes, and a black mustache and beard. His face was expressionless, completely blank. He just stood there, staring at Firas with a cold look, no emotion whatsoever. So far, nothing was really out of the ordinary. Everything seemed normal. Then, Firas uncovered the face of the body to begin the wash, and froze. Lying on the table was the exact same man standing next to him. Same eyebrows, same face, same body, same everything. Firas stood there, stunned, staring back and forth between the body and the man. Then the man spoke. He said, "Don't be surprised. I'm sorry if I startled you. That's my brother. We're twins. We were born in Syria." Firas felt embarrassed and, honestly, kind of stupid. His reaction hadn't been what you'd call professional, but the resemblance had genuinely shocked him. He apologized for how he'd acted and began washing the body. While he worked, he asked, "If you don't mind me asking, what happened to him?" The man explained that they lived in the countryside and had a farm with a water well. That morning, his brother had gone out to the farm, and he told him not to come back before lunch. But when lunchtime passed and he still hadn't shown up, they got worried. They searched the property and eventually found him, dead. He had accidentally fallen into the well. There had been no one around. It was an accident. Just fate. Firas had seen plenty of deaths like that. People who fell into wells, tragic accidents. It wasn't the first time, but what happened after this? That was something else entirely. About a month later, another body was brought in for washing. They laid the body on the table and Firas removed the shroud to begin the process. And when he saw the face, he froze. It was the same man who had come in a month ago. The same twin brother. The one who had stood next to him, calmly explaining how his brother died. He was now lying dead on the table. Firas immediately asked the people who brought him in what had happened. They said he fell into a well and died, same as his brother. They both died the exact same way, and on the same day of the week, which is very strange. They say just a few days before the twins fell into the well, their mother passed away, and immediately after her death, the water inside that well dried up completely. It was like whatever life had been in it vanished with her. No one even knew that well existed until it became the center of 2 deaths. But as strange as that was, it wasn't the only terrifying thing I've gone through in my time working at the morgue. One night, I received a report from a municipal worker, a guy who worked night shifts cleaning the city. He said that, while collecting trash, he stumbled across a headless man dumped inside a garbage pile. The body was picked up and taken in for an autopsy to try and determine the cause of death. But even after that, no one could identify who the victim was. As I stared at it, I noticed something sharp poking out between the fingers, just a small pointed edge, barely visible. And that's when I heard it. A voice. A soft, low whisper that seemed to come from right next to me. It said, "Don't give up. Try with everything you have. What he's holding is the key." I froze. That voice didn't sound like it came from the room. It felt like it crept into my mind. I'd never experienced anything like it before. The whisper kept repeating the same thing, gently but insistently. I didn't know what else to do. So I gathered all my strength and tried again. I pulled hard at the fingers, and finally, I managed to force the hand open, and what I found inside left me speechless. It was a strand of long hair, slightly curled, clearly from a woman. I had no idea how the forensic doctor had missed it, but I didn't think about that too long. All that mattered was getting this evidence to them as quickly as possible. Maybe it could help them figure out who the victim was or how he died. But just as I turned to leave, the power suddenly went out. The entire morgue was swallowed in darkness, and the fear hit me like a wave. Then I felt it. A cold hand gently grabbing mine as if it was shaking it, like it was thanking me for retrieving that piece of hair. I couldn't take it anymore. I tried to move away from the body, but I couldn't see anything. The room was completely black, and just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I heard it. A deep sigh, someone exhaling slowly, right there in the darkness. I was alone. Or at least I thought I was. Later on, the investigation moved forward based on the evidence we found. It turned out the victim had been murdered by his own wife. She had a neurological disorder that severely affected her mind. She was mentally unstable and had convinced herself that her husband had married another woman. But that woman wasn't real. She was just a figment of her imagination. The wife had completely lost touch with reality. Eventually, she was taken into custody and sent to prison. The only reason they figured any of this out was because of the messages the dead man left behind. Messages he had clung to until the very end. Messages, I believe, that were pushed through with the help of something from the other side. Now, I want to tell you the truth. Over time, I began to hate my work. It wore me down, mentally and emotionally. I was sick of the smell of camphor, how it soaked into the walls of the morgue, how it never went away. The smell of blood, the rotting corpses. The bodies I got after explosions in Baghdad weren't even full corpses sometimes, just pieces, random limbs, shattered parts of what used to be people. Sometimes they came to me wrapped in shrouds, barely identifiable. I didn't even know where to start washing. It was a tragedy inside a tragedy. I saw every kind of death imaginable, and I started to wonder how my father ever handled any of this. After a while, I could smell camphor on myself. It became part of me. I looked like death. I felt like death. People avoided me in the street. I stopped caring about how I looked. I stopped caring about anything. And then it got worse. When I walked through the city, I didn't see people anymore. I saw bodies. Corpses waiting to be laid on the table, waiting for me to wash them. If it had just stayed like that, just the world of the dead, I might have been able to handle it. But when something from another world started interfering with my job, that's when things really went dark. One night, I was called in to wash the body of an unidentified man. He had been sitting in the morgue for days. No one had come to claim him, no family, no friends. So they brought the body to me, wrapped in a shroud. I placed him on the washing table and removed the covering. The smell hit me instantly, a foul, overwhelming stench of decay. This body had been left for too long. The skin was filthy, coated in grime. The stench of death clung to everything. I reached for the cedar and camphor and got ready to begin. And just as I touched the body, the power went out in the middle of the night, right as I was about to begin washing him. So I stood there, waiting for the power to come back. 5 minutes passed. Then finally the electricity flickered on again. I took a deep breath and decided to just get it over with. I began washing the body, but as soon as the water touched the corpse, something didn't feel right. I actually said out loud, "This can't be real." 5 minutes later, the power went out again. At that point, I started thinking, something is trying to stop me from washing this body. The second outage lasted even longer than the first, and the room turned ice cold. It was pitch dark, and I didn't dare move from where I was standing. I just froze. Then, suddenly, I started hearing footsteps circling around me. Not just that. There were faint whispers, soft laughter, and I knew there wasn't a single person in that room with me. Where were these sounds coming from? That was the part that scared me the most. I couldn't understand it. I stood there completely paralyzed, heart racing, just waiting for the power to come back on. Then I remembered. I had a flashlight. I had bought it recently after a similar blackout incident. I kept it right there in the morgue, so I grabbed it, turned it on, and what I saw made my blood run cold. I immediately threw the flashlight in the direction of the body, because what I saw sitting in front of me was wrong. Something about the corpse had changed. It was sitting up, twisted in a bizarre way. The flashlight hit the ground and spun, casting its beam toward the right wall. That's when I saw them. Standing in the corner of the morgue were dark, misshapen figures. Shadowy, black, inhuman things, and they were staring at me. Their faces were warped, and their presence filled the room with an overwhelming rage. Their appearance, whatever they were, froze me to the spot. My legs stopped working. I couldn't move. It felt like my whole body had shut down. I couldn't scream. I couldn't run. I couldn't even look away. Then I heard it, one of them muttering. I don't know what they were saying, but it didn't sound like anything human. It was more like a chant, or a curse, probably some kind of incantation, and the louder their whispers got, the louder something else became. The sound of flesh being beaten, bones cracking as the corpse lying on the washing table was being slammed again and again. You could hear its body hitting the cold slab, and I just stood there crying, listening to this horrifying noise. It was as if something from the other world had come for this man, determined to make him pay for something. But what could he have possibly done? I started reciting Quran to drown out the noises and calm myself. As I read, everything around me slowly began to fade. The sounds, the chanting, the beatings, until eventually, silence. When I opened my eyes, the lights were back on. Everything in the room had returned to normal. At least I thought so, until I looked at the body. That's when I got hit with the third and final shock of the night. The body was swollen, massively, bloated in a way that didn't seem natural, like it was filled with gases building up fast. The kind of bloating that could lead to the body exploding at any moment. And those creatures, whatever they were, may have had something to do with it. Only God knows. At that point, I didn't care what the explanation was. I was already mentally shattered from what I'd seen. I couldn't take any more. I turned off the lights and left the morgue immediately. I just wanted to go home and sleep. Though that night, of course, I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I forced myself to return. I cleaned up the entire place as best I could, but something in me had changed. The following day, I put the morgue up for sale. I got almost nothing for it, but I didn't care. Eventually, I sold it off. I walked away from that cursed place and all the death and fear that lived inside it. Sometime later, I found out who that last corpse belonged to. It was a man known to be one of the most dangerous black magicians in the region. He was responsible for destroying people's lives and tearing families apart with his witchcraft. That was his fate. I moved on. I opened a new business. I started living in peace. And that was the end of my story. But every so often, when I walk by a closed room or pass a dark alley, I feel it. That same cold stillness I felt back then. Like something never really left the morgue. Like something followed me home. And I still wonder. That whisper I heard. That sigh behind me. Those shadows in the corner. Were they warning me or thanking me? I walked away from that job thinking I'd closed the door on death. But some doors don't stay shut.